correctly with the correct amount.
D20 Radio, where gamers roll.
www.d20radio.com.
Welcome to Me and Steve Talk RPG, the podcast where me and my friend Steve try and help you get the most out of your role-playing game experience. Hey folks, welcome back to Me and Steve Talk RPGs. I'm Steve.
And I'm Steve.
So there's two Steves! Yay!
Yay!
And we're going to talk some RPGs, but before we get into our conversation this week, I want to take a minute to talk about another podcast on the D20 Radio Network. And this week, it's going to be the longest podcast title on the D20 Radio Network. That being
Correct.
The Wondrous Atlas of Creation's Destiny, which
is kind of ironically an Exalted podcast, as we recently dropped our first episode of our Exalted actual play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is a lore and setting podcast for Exalted. And generally what they've done in the past is they'll take a topic and they'll actually do 2 episodes on it. One of which is discussing much more of like the lore and story of the thing. And then the sister episode to that is gameplay application of the thing.
Absolutely.
You know, I know go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, we talked to them a while back about some Exalted before we even got our hands on the system, and now we've gotten to play some, and I'd like to talk some more about Exalted. I love
it's a lot of fun.
It's so good. It's so good. Yeah, definitely.
I was going to say, yeah, check them out. Again, it's the Wondrous Atlas of Creation's Destiny. There'll be a link in the show notes, along with links to the D20 Radio Discord, where you can find more other cool RPG-related podcasts and all kinds of fun stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's that. So, on to a conversation about RPG-ish things.
Yes, absolutely. So you had come with a topic for this week. Why don't you pitch us that topic?
Well, so the topic of buy-in is always good for conversation, and how do you get more at your table, right? Because fundamentally, it's kind of important, right? How do you get your players to buy into your story? And I don't know exactly how I got onto this phrase, and it sounds a little weird, but the phrase popped into my head somewhere of like low investment buy-in.
Right.
And what I mean to kind of explain the phrase is how do you get buy-in that doesn't require, because we want our players invested, but there's a threshold, right, of they need to do this much before they can get bought in. And so how do we, or what are ways we could make that threshold where now you're invested in the story lower, so that like you don't spend the first session and a half, 2 sessions, whatever, trying to get them into the world. You can start deepening the web of things that they're paying attention to.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Absolutely.
when I say low investment buy-in, that's kind of what I mean. I'm not talking about necessarily a game that doesn't require a lot of buy-in, but more that the initial threshold for enjoying it is relatively lower. You know, like if you take it in the context of a TCG, you know, you want cheap starter decks that are still fun to play.
Right.
And I guess maybe, you know, I don't know if that makes sense in the context of an RPG, you know, that you want the players to be able to get into the world, and then you can add more stuff on. And then to kind of compound onto this idea, someone, I believe somehow connected with this podcast, had recommended to me a podcast called Writing Excuses, which was initially started by Brandon Sanderson.
Right.
And so finally I go back and I download the first episode from like 17 years ago. And the cool thing about this show is it's 15-minute episodes, but it's Brandon Sanderson and writer buddies talking about techniques for writing fiction stories. Gee, we're not that far off of RPGs already, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So in the very first episode of this, they mentioned a concept that was referenced in an essay by, and forgive me if I'm not getting the right name, but I believe it was like a Stephen Donaldson, but some well-known science fiction fantasy author, that kind of one of the ways that one of the techniques that you can use as a writer to know when you've got enough to kind of like go on in planning your story is to have a mundane idea combined with an extraordinary idea. And when they meet, that melding is when you know you can go forward. And it struck me that if you apply that concept to RPGs, that can lower the barrier, if you will. Now
Right.
What that mundane idea is a variety of things, possibly, right? Like maybe that mundane idea is the setting or the system.
Mm-hmm.
As much as I don't like 5th edition D&D, that's a low barrier for a lot of players to, okay, I know that part. Then you add on funky story, right? Fun part for us is we like to play funky system. So now that creates a higher level of investment. So, do we need to initially start with maybe a less interesting, detailed story to let people get their head around the system to then evolve the story once they've got their head wrapped around that initial part?
Well, maybe unconsciously, I do this already, sort of, and I'll say it that way. I usually try to come up with there's a term called high concept, meaning like one or two sentences as far as the idea of what you're trying to pitch. And a lot of my games, starting them out, I want to do high concept games, right? Where I'll pitch to somebody, like if I'm building a player base and I only have 10 minutes of somebody's time, and be like, hey, I'm trying to get a cyberpunk game together. And the basic idea of the cyberpunk game is that you guys are going to be a crew investigating a string of like stolen vending machines. And that's a pitch. I stole that from you, but that's a pitch.
In fairness, I stole that from you at the table when I ran that one shot. So,
well, yeah, but and that's a sturdy enough pitch that hey, it's cyberpunk, so it's the future, and you're investigating these like high-tech vending machines that are being stolen off of the streets. You've been hired by a broker for the company that owns the vending machines. And that's enough of a pitch that like it gets people invested, and then they don't have to you don't build on that story until they're in game playing the game and getting the details right. And it keeps people just focused on like, oh well, what kind of character are you playing, what kind of X, Y, or Z are you running, like what gear are you running in this situation, what kind of what setup do you have? And maybe I'll give a little bit more details and be like, I'm looking for a session that's going to be like 5 to 7, or like talking about details around the game, meta narrative stuff. But a lot of times my pitches for game are just one or two sentences of like, hey, this is an idea I had, I want to run this, what do you think? Do you want to play it? You don't want to play it? All right, cool, we move on to the next person. You do want to play it? All right, great, here's when we're looking at play it. And it's people bought in. It's, like I said, that low investment side of things where you're not necessarily, how do I put it? You're not necessarily giving them too many details for them to get hung up on early on. And it's enough for them to be like, yeah, that sounds interesting, or no, that doesn't really sound interesting to me. Okay, well, cool. Then let's discuss, if that's not something you're interested in, then I have these other 15 ideas. Just, like I said, I think it's the how do I want to say this? A fisherman can get hung up on the details of the lure that they're using.
Mm-hmm.
But the fish doesn't care because it just looks like another fish.
No, that makes sense. And like I wonder too, like sometimes if and for me, like okay, a game like Slay Industries, right? The world is amazing and fascinating and weird and there's all this neat cool stuff, but on a certain level, a lot of that is information that unless the players are already familiar with the lore of the world, they're not going to have a context of it.
Yeah.
And so well, if I've read all that and I think, oh, this is fascinating and this, and I can play this against this and that against that, that's great. But that creates a really high barrier for my players to have to absorb that before they understand the storyline I'm trying to pitch.
Right. And that's where I feel that, that's where I feel in a lot of times I don't have a problem with players. Okay. So depending on the game, I don't have a problem with players that want to go and do their own research, but a lot of the times when I'm running games, I tend to house rule settings, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, for example, my Cyberpunk game, I'm having a lot of fun with it. Those players are really enjoying themselves. We're having a great time playing. But at the same time, I'm playing it in Pittsburgh. It's a setting that's not necessarily in the book. I'm playing by the rules of the book. I'm playing in the spirit of the game, but I'm changing enough of that so that my players can't go and do they can't go and be like, well, actually, this didn't happen at this point. Well, actually, it does because this isn't a setting that's published. You know what I'm saying? And by doing a little bit of that, and even in like Slay Industries, by doing some of that and just being like, okay, so this is what the book says, and we're going to follow the rules of the book, but we're going to take this setting, we're going to tweak it to how it works better for me as the GM, as the storyteller, and we're going to mold that world to a story that works better for us at the table. We can offload some of that heavy lore and be like, well, yeah, I understand that you went and did all your research on these particular corps, but this one doesn't exist in this world, or you know what I mean? Like, not disincentivizing that, but maybe more so like dialing back and keeping your players engaged with your story and not necessarily the story of the game itself.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I mean, I think too, like, I think something specifically with Slay that I need to try and do as I want to get something going with this is to try and figure out a storyline that I can get the players going on that just makes sense from this is a thing that your characters are going to want to do. And then start weaving in the weirdness.
That's where you need to play up. That's where you need to, and let's talk about it. I played that one shot with you of Slay at PGX last year, which was a blast. And from that one shot, kept playing that game for months. Okay. Just from that one shot of the people that the randoms that we played at the table with, and just, I could have kept playing that game. I was bought in. And I think one of the things that you need to do is focus on one of the core tenets of that game, whatever core tenet you want to focus on. So for me, when we played that, I was like, I'm really invested in the idea that of Play Industries being this game about gaining viewers and doing things to gain viewers and gaining notoriety and gaining sponsors, and like treating it more like almost like a fledgling sports team. Yes, a social media type commentary thing. And so that's one way that, like, if you play into that aspect early and you start encouraging them, be like, hey, listen, if you do this for me, I'll give you sponsored jerseys. You guys can get like clothing and or I'll give you better weaponry, or I'll do this or I'll do that, whatever, however you want to do it. You get them bought in on that stuff early, and then as the story progresses, once they're bought in on that and they're like, oh well, yeah, now we gotta make sure that I'm using less bullets because I keep getting hit with the bullet tax and blah 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 blah, and you start getting into that stuff, then you can start adding in the weird. Then you can start introducing your, like, oh, here's this really bizarre thing that's happening. Like, you come across something that maybe you shouldn't be seeing. You know what I'm saying? You just gotta. It's a building blocks type thing, right? And that's where we've sort of been talking at the beginning. Your core concept of the episode being this idea that you want to start with a mundane idea. So the mundane idea is that you're social media influencers, but the way you gain followers is by murdering things.
Right. So
and
in
then,
a sense,
that's the whole idea, right? Like, that's the whole concept. Like, the mundane idea is that you're social media influencers, and then the, like,
extraordinary
is that you gain followers by murdering things, right?
Right.
And then from there, now that you have that concept, we can then build on that and be like, okay, now the weird stuff starts happening. Now you guys see something you're not supposed to. You guys do something you're not supposed to. You piss off the wrong people. Like, that type of stuff gets added in as you go. And I think that's where you just have to start with, like, a snippet of an idea and then build, right?
Yeah.
And I always get overwhelmed, and I've talked to a lot of people that will come to me and be like, oh man, I got this really cool concept for a game, and they'll just lore dump 40 pages of information on me. And I go, oh, wow, that's awesome. I'm really glad that you put all this time into the world and everything seems really flushed out. I don't really want to play because you didn't give me a pitch. You handed me a book.
Yeah. Well, okay. And so, I mean, yeah, that's a thing, right? Because, like, on some level, I think that's a key difference between an RPG story and a fiction story. Because the players, it's not a static story that we're progressing through in stages. It's a story that very easily can mold and change based on the actions of the people involved, which
not just very easily, but should. Mold and change. Yeah.
Right.
I'm sorry if your story doesn't change based on your players will feel ineffective.
And like, look, this idea, right, clearly works. I mean, look, Star Wars is what? Hero's journey plus space wizards with laser swords.
Yeah.
And World War II.
No.
That was what Lucas started Star Wars with. Like, it is very much inspired by World War II, hero's journey, and space wizards with laser swords.
I mean, so a TV show I've been really enjoying, Tulsa King. The core concept of Tulsa King.
Oh my God.
There's a new episode out today. I haven't watched it yet.
Now we've been kind of waiting to, like, binge the new season as it.
Oh, fair enough.
After a little bit.
I can't do that. Seasons, we have to watch it as it comes out. But Tulsa King, the core concept is a displaced gangster starts up a new gang in Tulsa.
Mm-hmm.
That's the basic premise of it, and it sounds silly, but it's so good.
Oh, and look, I say whatever you want about Tyler Sheridan.
Yeah,
but the writing for Stallone and the way Stallone pulls off that part is just chef's kiss.
I genuinely think it's one of, man, I hate to say this, but I genuinely think it's one of Stallone's best later parts. Meaning that, like, post peak Stallone, post, like, the original Rocky series, we're talking about, like, we're into his later years. He's doing stuff, and I think this is one of his best roles just as a character, because he disappears into and it's hard to say that, like, it's Sylvester Stallone, but he disappears into that character.
but it's yes, he does. Like you completely buy him as
Dwight, yeah.
this as Dwight Manfredi.
Yeah.
And I guess that like you said, that's and the extraordinary of that is in a sense just the shenanigans that
Oh yeah.
make the show what it is.
Yeah, I love it. I think that show is so good. But again, that's one of those like simple concept ideas that we've built on. Now we're in a season of this, and things are going on. Things have happened. Things have progressed way beyond the idea of a displaced gangster in Tulsa building a new gang, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's where we need to like in gaming. I think sometimes we get too hung up on the I gotta have my world flushed out before this game starts. No, you don't. No, you really don't have to have your world flushed out at all. You just need to have a core concept and an understanding that they're gonna encounter these type of difficulties and let your players, let your story, let your world build organically. You'll have and yes, some people can do really well. Like Brennan Lee Mulligan, I'm super excited for the new season of Critical Role, mainly because I'm back into listening to actual play podcasts. So I was listening to some of the last couple years of Dimension 20 stuff and but you know, that's all pre-written, that's all plotted out, that's all pre-planned in a lot of ways. But at the same time, he doesn't have control over what those players are going to do.
Right.
And listen to interviews with him. He'll talk about, you know, everything, nothing ever survives first contact with players. It doesn't. But yeah, it's one of those things where building that world, building the ideas that you have around that world it's best to maybe not put all of the detail into it right off the hop, because then you're going to be disappointed when all of that detail doesn't get brought out, right? Like and that's the other truth, is that I've talked to many people, many GMs who are always like, "Oh, I had a whole story flushed out." And you know, we've talked about what happens if you move left, right. I mean, that's a different conversation, but right. I've talked to many people that are like, I had a whole story plotted out and my players just completely ignored it or completely missed it, and I really felt bummed because I didn't get to show them this cool thing. And again, you know, moving goalposts, we've talked about that. But at the same time, if you have, and this is just, again, you know, it goes back to me being a more improv heavy GM. But in my opinion, if you have stuff that's less, you know, maybe it's less of the like, oh, I got it plotted out to a T. They're going to be here. Sorry. They're going to be here at this time. They're going to be there at this time. They're going to be here at this time. Like everything's plotted out to a T. You're going to be disappointed when things don't go your way.
Right. Well, it's the you know, to use my own example, it's the chocolate lava cake brownie conundrum.
Can you elaborate on the chocolate lava cake brownie conundrum?
So the way I've said this before, right? And I do this to myself a lot. So I do, like you said, I've got this whole grand idea schemed out in my head. And then things don't go the way I envisioned it. And it is different. And so I liken this to you're having friends over and you want to make a chocolate lava cake. But it doesn't go well. But what you end up with is brownies instead of a chocolate lava cake. Because to me, it I don't know. I've never tried to make a chocolate lava cake, but it seems like chocolate lava cake that didn't go right could very easily turn into brownies.
Right. And brownies are delicious.
Right. And from the player's perspective, they got really cool brownies. As the GM, you're going, they got a failed chocolate lava cake.
Yes, exactly. It goes back to that. I'm my own worst critic. I'm my own worst, you know, I'm my biggest, like, I'm the person that's going to be hard on me the most. And hold on one second. Okay, I think he's done now. I had to wait. I was like,
No, I heard him going crazy there.
Anyway, but yeah, I'm my own worst critic. I'm my hardest, like, I'm hardest on myself. Nobody else is, and you know, it's just a fact of like, oh man, I tried to make this chocolate lava cake and it turned out to be brownies and I was really mad. Everybody was happy to eat the brownies. Like
right. And
that's the part you always leave out. That's the part, like, think about all the times that, like, I've told stories about like failed games. You've told stories. It's always like, or remember that time I was running D&D for you guys, and you had to steal something from a museum.
Yes.
Yes, and everything just kind of went wrong.
Yes.
It's so there was this situation where they had to steal things from a museum. I thought they would wait until the museum was closed, sneak in at night, take the things quietly. No, we're going to go in the middle of the day. We're going to smash and grab and run.
Well, and in your defense, we initially were planning to do the stealthy thing. And then
Right.
for whatever reason, it went sideways. I don't even remember what the reason was now.
I don't even think the stealthy thing, like, you guys had talked about the stealthy thing for a couple seconds, and then for whatever reason, somebody let the, like, barbarian be the one to be like, yeah, let's just smash it and take it and run. And everybody was like, yeah, well, why can't we just smash it and take it and run? And so, you know, you get a situation where it's like, okay, well, I had planned on them to sneak in at night, but they're just going to go do a smash and grab. So things are going to go kind of sideways. Like, things are going to go hard for them. And it did. And it was a hilarious adventure. And people really, you know, it really seemed like it resonated well with the players. But it was just one of those things where, for me, that's not what I had planned.
Right.
But sometimes things don't go as planned, and that's, you know, that's true in gaming and that's true in life. Sometimes things just don't go the way you expect them to. And I don't know, man. I think that's what makes gaming fun sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, you know, as we're talking about that, I think one of the ways, like we're talking about, you know, setting up your world to have these plans that, so I think what you need to try and do is don't have your grand story scripted out, but have your antagonists or your other parties in play have agendas created for them. Not necessarily plans of action, but agendas.
Yeah,
And if
and
you
I
know
also
that agenda, you can then, okay, players action X, you know, antagonist other party reaction because their agenda is this, because you want to have a world that moves in response to the players, but to have your story progress, you need to have your antagonist having something happening too. Like, I would say, you know, to make a very base example of this, right? Your story is, and we'll just say that the thing has been stolen, and your party is sent to recover stolen MacGuffin.
right.
Well, maybe don't have it. You know, bad guy Bob has stolen the wondrous MacGuffin and absconded to the land of Ishtar.
Mm-hmm.
Bad guy Bob has stolen the wondrous MacGuffin and is planning to hide out in the wilds of Ishtar. But depending on what the players do, that's where he's headed, but that's not where he went. You get the distinction there?
Yes. Yeah.
You know, and because that's where he's headed, maybe the players do something and now he diverts because whatever thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that lets the players' actions have meaningful impact. It doesn't tie you in, doesn't have you locked into, well, I need the players to head for the wilds of Ishtar, but rumor has it that's where he was seen heading.
Yeah. He was headed towards the hill, you know, towards the wherever, but if you get, you know,
Yeah,
well,
you know, like and I maybe that wasn't the greatest example, but
but also in real life examples. Okay. How many times have people been exploring and we're heading to one location, but we end up somewhere else because we didn't really know how to get to said location?
right?
There's one big guy that kind of did that. He ended
Yeah.
up in the Bahamas and called it America, but whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, like, just the idea that, like, oh, I want to get to, I want to get to there from here, and I think if I go this way, I can get there. Well, I'm going the complete opposite direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And it's not about the destinations. It's about the journey at a lot of turns.
Mm-hmm.
It's while the destination is while the ending to this story, the destination of this story, the goal of this story is where you're working towards. It's not about that. It's about the journey. It's about the time that you spent with your party investigating this X, Y, or Z, or fighting beside each other in how many battles, and building a camaraderie, having meals together, going shopping together. It's about the time you spent together. It's not about it's why, like, the Lord of the Rings, the most, it builds, but the most, like, undramatic part is when he throws the ring into the fire, and that's the end. That's the end of that part, and we're gonna go back home now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's this idea that it's not about the destination, it's about the journey to get there. That's the fun part. And that's the fun part in a lot of gaming, is it's not about the, all the stories we tell about, like, when we play Delta Green together, right? The stories of Delta Green are not about, oh, well, and then the cleaners came in and cleaned up the whole situation and we handled it. The fun part of Delta Green is, oh, do you remember when we got hung up on that one clue that you'd given us and we just couldn't figure out what the point of it was? Or you remember when he reached under that trailer and there was a bunch of a rabid raccoon or squirrel or whatever underneath of there, or there were bees in the outhouse? Like, that's the fun part. Like, that's the part
Mm-hmm.
that people tell stories about. It's not the part where it's like, oh, well, yeah, and then we solved the problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, and I think that's where, okay. And like you mentioned the Delta Green thing. Well, so if anyone's read the Last Things Last Quick Start Adventure, that's what the whole scenario was based off of. I changed it up slightly, whatever. But for anyone who's grown up in even slightly rural areas, the concept of an old mobile home as a camp is completely like something you've seen.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
the
man.
idea,
I don't mean to call that one player out, but that one player was completely freaked out by the idea of there being. And meanwhile,
those yeah.
I'm sitting here going, man, I go camping every like year just to specifically do that exact thing of, like, getting to a spot in the middle of the woods where there's nothing.
Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, in a sense, right, that's both mundane and exceptional for different players.
Right.
But like, right, and now, so because of the nature of the game, you're on edge. Look, I don't have to tell you, the idea of a raccoon being holed up under some trailer out in the middle of the
that's
woods
terrible.
is completely believable. And
yeah, it's 100% real. I wouldn't be shocked if under the house, the trailer that I'm in currently, there's a raccoon held up underneath of there. I would not be shocked by that.
right. And it works as kind of a comedic thing, but it also, in a sense, it's a comedic release. But I think in the context of a game like that and the way I tried to use it, it's a relief, but it also turns up the tension because, wait, that wasn't the thing.
Right, that's
What
not
is
the
the
thing. Right, exactly. Well, if that wasn't the thing, what could it be?
Right.
But yeah, no, it's again, yeah, I think, and again, that goes back to that, what we've been sort of talking about at the core of the episode is that this idea that these mundane concepts with why do I keep forgetting the other word?
Exceptional
ideas, right? And I love it. I think that's where, yeah.
I wonder too, to break away from the GM Center discussion here, is this a good way to approach building a character for a game?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. And your mileage may vary. But I think for me, this is how again, we've talked a little bit about it. Steve's very crazy when it comes to building games. I read the resolution mechanics out of most games and go, okay, I like how this works. And I like the, vibe that this game's giving off and the feeling that this game's telling me. And I'm going to go ahead and tell a story using that. And it's going to be this simple concept, and I'll pitch it at somebody and somebody will go, oh, I like that. And now I have one player, right?
But I mean, instead of trying to build out the most amazing character concept ever, have a core basic thing and this one thing about your character that is exceptional or unusual or however you want to phrase it.
I so do that. I built a cyberpunk character a while back. His name was Skunk. Ever tell you about Skunk?
I don't remember that.
Skunk was a solo. Skunk was a redneck, and we never got to play with him. Skunk was a redneck who, his whole concept is that he had a gas mask, and he just loaded down with tear gas, CS gas, gas grenades was Skunk's whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he stunk. He just stunk the room up. And that's what his core concept was. And I loved it. I loved the idea of this guy who, while he could shoot a gun just fine, he was just like, we got 15 guys in this room. Let's see here. I need 3 of these, and that should deal with it.
Well, you remember, and at this point, what did I call him? Star Child? The solo I built for
Bootsy Collins.
Yes, my Bootsy Collins inspired solo, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so he's a solo. But where a lot of people want to go, what do you want to say, dark and mysterious, I went, well, it's cyberpunk. What if, it in a sense, right, it's flash and style. And what's more flash and style than, Primera Bootsy Collins?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I have a solo in my cyberpunk game now who is he dresses like some kind of preppy punk, all because he's anti-corpo, and it's funny because he dresses like a corpo and is makes music about how the corps are evil.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and that just makes me laugh. I mean, it just does. It just makes me smile on the inside and the outside, because it's I could see that character being a real thing in this world.
Well, I think too the neat thing about using that concept in character generation is that it gives you something to hang on to, something to base the character around, but still leaves them very open to developing and shaping based on what happens in the game.
Right.
So I mean, I don't know. I as much as yes, it's in a sense a completely stolen concept of marrying the mundane with the exceptional. I think it can be used to create that low barrier to entry in buy-in.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think I think we've pretty much exhausted everything we could say out of that.
Yeah, I think we got some good thought out of that, though.
Yeah, definitely.
And we got to explain the lava cake brownie conundrum.
Right, the lava cake brownie conundrum. I think that's probably the name of the episode.
It might be.
But I think it's time for Game of the Week.
Woohoo! Game of the Week!
Game of the Week! Game of the Week!
So, My game of the week is gonna be one. I want to play it. I want to get my hands on this. It's pay what you want. It's a game called. Hold on. Let me get to the right. I gotta get to the right thing.
Getting to the right thing. Isn't that what this whole episode has been about?
Right, exactly. It's called Hyper Neon Racers. It's an OSR game. It's pay what you want. It was just dropped on the 11th. It's like a rules light, high octane cyberpunk racing game. I kind of want this, and I want to play this. I don't know that I kind of want to run it, but at the same time, I kind of want to play it myself. But you know, just the idea of having a super fast, because OSR is really quick, maybe super deadly racing game sounds a lot of fun. Their inspirations: Speed Racer, Fast and the Furious, Initial D, Fast Cars, Reckless Stunts, Teenage Street Cruise, Hyper Neon Speeds. It sounds like, you know, there's an anime that's called Redline. It's very goofy, but it's a racing anime. It's just a movie, and it's sort of got this same kind of feel to it, where it's like somewhere in a weird future we're gonna race at 4,000 miles an hour. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, that sounds really cool, actually.
Yeah, it sounds
based
fun,
off,
and it's
Electric Bastion Land or Mythic Bastion Land.
yeah. And again, pay what you want, so you know, pick that up when you can.
That looks cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Hyper Neon Racers.
Yeah, what do you got, Steve?
All right, so I found something. This is actually older. It's been on drive-through for 14 years. It is not a game. It is a system agnostic setting book.
Okay.
It is called Murphy's World, where things can always get worse. So let me read you the description that the publisher has put up on drive-through. Remember long ago, all those creatures that once lived under your bed? The ogres in the closet, the way your clothes thrown haphazardly over the back of a chair transformed without warning into a horrible monster once the lights were turned out? And no one else could see what you saw waiting in the shadows? You somehow knew there was the universal law that said you were safe as long as no part of your body stuck out from under the bed sheets. If only you could hold on till morning, all would be fine. But as you get older, right, a sock or a shirt still goes missing. Where do they go? You know, where is the wondrous, amazing graveyard of left socks? You know, loose buttons. And so this is basically a world that is the junk heap of the universe. It's kind of silly, kind of goofy. It's theoretically, it's the realm of the Fae, a land of myth and legends where popular folklore and dreams, along with pulp culture, get comically twisted yet maintain an internal sense of logic. But it operates according to Murphy's Law. And part of this is that it's based on this intergalactic trader named Sean Murphy, who, you know, it seems goofy and gonzo, but the fun part of this, as I read into it, is that it's designed to be played as an interlude in whatever game you're already playing. You take your characters, you port them into this.
Oh, that's fun. That's fun.
And then do a thing with it. So it's intentionally systemless. It's take your characters and put them into this and have a goofy, weird romp, and then go back to your other thing. You know, so I don't know. It just seemed really cool. The PDF is
that looks like a lot of fun.
$10. The reviews are actually pretty damn good.
Yeah, I'm sure they would. Like, it seems like they would be fun, but
and there's actually a supplement for it. It's also $10 called Bob, Lord of Evil.
Bob, Lord of Evil.
Yes, I didn't really look into that, but yeah. So like I said, that's my pick this week is going to be this Murphy's World, because it just seems like a fun thing to
I might have to
occasionally pull out and go, hey, guess what?
Do some reading. But As always, links to everything are in the show notes. Check us out on Patreon, Discord, YouTube, anywhere podcasts are found. Yeah, and as always, be kind to one another and get out there and play some RPGs.
Yep. Take care, y'all.
Intro and outro music by the band 12 Noon. You can email us at meandsteverpg@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter and RPGs. Find us on Facebook at Me and Steve RPG Podcast, on Discord at Me and Steve RPGs, and as always, all of these links are in the show notes. Thank you, and be kind to one another.
How much for the cigar?
Cigar, $20, dog. You gotta go down the street to the store and buy that.